Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for logging on. It looks like there's some familiar names on here and some new names. So it's nice to meet everybody virtually that I haven't met before. My name is Sarah Romesburg, and I am out of the Mooresville office. One of the best things about Lantern is that we have these group sessions where we can kind of brainstorm and hopefully learn some things or have a refresher of some things that you've known in the past, but some things that are going to help our business. So today we are really going to focus on pricing and how to do CMAs. And honestly, the most of today is going to be about the resources that are available to us through Canopy and through MLS and a lot of the stuff that we pay for with our annual dues and membership. So I just want to make sure everyone knows about the resources that are available and can use them to help with pricing. I'm sure we all have experienced that pricing and coming up with a list price, or on the buyer's agent side, an offer price can be one of the most difficult things to do. And our clients usually have one idea and we usually have another idea. So when we can support our idea with data, it makes it a lot easier for us all to be on the same page. So as always, if you do have questions when I am going over stuff, by all means, just interrupt me, or you can type in the chat if you have a question, but feel free to speak up and interrupt. I will try to not speak as fast as I do sometimes, but I promise we'll keep it at an hour or less. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Like I said, I do have a PowerPoint, but most of this is honestly going to be navigating through the MLS website and me showing you some of the resources and walking you through an example house and how to properly price it and get a CMA. All right. So like I said, my name's Sarah Romesburg. I'm out of the Mooresville office. Here is my cell phone number and my email address. And anytime you need anything, I'm always available. You can call or text me or email me. And I have helped people in the past with pricing questions or CMA questions, and definitely would do that for anybody. So don't hesitate to reach out if you ever need me in the future. So why is pricing so important? In real estate, we don't have a Kelly Blue Book of saying this is a 2014 house, 2-story, 4-bed, 3-bath, and it's worth $475,000. That would be nice if we had that with real estate, like they do with auto sales or some of the other industries have standards to go on. Real estate does not have that standard. And so we have to be the expert, and we have to be knowledgeable about how to find data, use the data, and really focus that into an accurate market value of a property. So we just always need to remember that we are helping our clients with one of the biggest, if not the biggest, transaction of their lives. Most people buying or selling a home is the biggest thing they're ever going to do financially. And so we have a ethical responsibility to our clients to make sure we are knowledgeable, we are serving them, and we are also serving the market that we live in. So the bottom note there, we have a responsibility as realtors for the overall health of the market. And what I mean by that is, we all want us all to succeed, and we want our clients to get the most they can for their homes. We want our buyers to get the fair value of a property. And when us as agents are knowledgeable and competent, we create a healthy market. And that is one of our most important responsibilities as realtors. So as always, I have a little note at the bottom of all my slides. And the note today is you are the expert. If you are not one, become one. That is so important because none of us start out being knowledgeable honestly about anything in real estate. We learn how many feet are in an acre, and we learn about, the different types of ownership and deeds in real estate school, but we do not learn the actual things that we need to know to serve our clients well. So it's not going to just poof out of the sky and you have all the information that you need. This is one of those situations where it's preaching to the choir, because the fact that you have signed up and taken this class and have logged in shows that you are trying to be the expert in your field. So again, if you are not an expert in a certain area, become one. If you have a downtime in your market, or if you have a downtime with your clients, take classes, get certifications, get a mentor, do all the things to build up that knowledge. So factors that influence pricing, obviously, some of these are just standard things. The market and the economy, the price of a 4-bedroom house in Charlotte versus the house of a 4-bedroom house in San Francisco are very different. Again, there's no Kelly Blue Book of this is how much it costs, this is how much, the market value is. Every market is so dependent. And one thing I will suggest to you when you keep in mind building your business is, just because you can do something does not mean that you should do something. So I am licensed in South Carolina. I've done a few South Carolina transactions. I'm knowledgeable about South Carolina real estate, but I would not list a property in Charleston, South Carolina. I mean, technically I could join that MLS down there. I could, but I don't know the market in Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm not knowledgeable to do that. I would not do that. So you need to know your market and the economy. So the things of people who live in Charlotte in this area, the banking industry, the NASCAR industry, the Amazon now, all the things that bring people to this area, it's important to know those factors and kind of do some research on the people who live here. So location, obviously, same thing with the market. Different locations have different values. Lot size is super important. Amenities, whether that be amenities at your property or amenities in a neighborhood or a community. Age of major systems, we all know that's important. Roof, HVAC, well, septic, all of those things are super important to keep in mind and can affect value. And then upgrades, both the inside and outside of the home. We all know, though, that an upgrade is not necessarily dollar in, dollar out. So a seller thinks I spent $15,000 on new paint and new floor, but that does not necessarily mean that that's $15,000 in value that has increased on the property. So knowing which upgrades are important and which are not so important when it comes to adding value is important. Schools and crime rates are also something that strongly affect value. As realtors, it's not our position to give our opinion on those two things, because what is important to me might not be important to my clients. It is our responsibility to guide them where to go to get the information on their own. So I know we've all had people ask us, how are the schools in that area? And you can direct them to the website. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it gives schools grades and stars and all that stuff. And so you want to be very careful just from a compliance standpoint of not giving your opinions or advice when it comes to crime rates in schools, but instead guiding them where they need to go. The general condition is super important. So, if it looks like it has been taken care of and the upkeep has been done, or if it's been vacant for 3 years and, kind of the upkeep's not been done, maintenance stuff, that affects value. And then obviously the recent sales. So the comparable sales close to that property are probably the number one thing that's going to influence the price. The season and the time of year also factor into your pricing. So, the spring, we all know kind of everybody gears up to get their house listed and move right at the end of school or right before school starts, or, different things. Whereas around Christmas time, maybe people are not going to be as actively looking for homes, or sellers are not going to want to have people into their homes during the holidays. So those are just some factors that influence pricing and things we need to think about when we go to price a property. CMAs are important because Well, the most important reason a CMA is important, I think, is because it shows our clients that we are knowledgeable. We are not fishing out a number out of outer space. We have done our research. We have looked at the data. We have found comps, and we are showing them where we think the house should be priced based on actual data. I like data. I like having everything. I like lists. I like calendars. I like reasons, pro con list. My husband, I'm sure, loves that about me, but that is something I value. And so if someone just says, this is what I think it's worth, I'm going to say, well, why do you think that? What data have you found? And so a CMA is that actual piece that we can use to show our clients the research that we have done. So for buyers, it's also important to do a CMA because we want to let them know, what a fair offer price is. A lot of times our buyers are not sure of where to come in with an offer. When I have a buyer who's in that situation, I'll run a full CMA with different avenues that I'm going to show you in the future to kind of give them a range of this is what the comps say this property is worth. With buyers, sometimes emotions get into that. So it says on paper, this house might be worth $400,000, but if this is your house that you want to live in and raise your family in and see yourself sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair, the value might be more to you, but the data says this. So it's important to do a CMA for both a listing and when you are making an offer for a buyer. It's not CMAs, and pricing is not just a listing agent and a seller thing. It is something that we need to do on both ends of working with our client. Nitty gritty out now, and then I'm going to show you all of these things in a practical way very shortly. So square footage is probably the number one thing, in my opinion, that is going to factor pricing and be important in a CMA. We all know that price per square foot is one of the numbers that you should know when you are listing a property or making an offer on a property. And we also know that appraisers really value a price per square foot number, and they look at price per square foot comps for their comparable properties when they are appraising the subject property. So the age of a house is also an important factor. The neighborhood, if it's in a neighborhood or not in a neighborhood. The kind of home is also important. So if you live in a ranch with a basement, your price per square foot number is going to be different than a 2-story home. We all know the footprint of a house affects the price per square footage number and the value. So when I say kind of home, I'm talking about 1-story, 2-story, basement, if it has a attached garage, all of those things. So again, garage space is important. The number of stories in a home. If the home has exterior features like a pool or a building like a shop or a shed, if it has a fenced-in backyard, if it has any special exterior stuff, that's going to affect the value. Construction state. So by that, I mean, is it new construction? Is it 1-year-old? Is it 2-year-old? Is it, 50 years old? What construction state it is in and the age of the house is going to affect the value. And then the listing age. So that goes along with construction state. And then the acreage. Acreage is also super important. And not only is just the number of acreage important, but the type of acreage. So if you have a 2-acre property that if you're listing land and it's 2 acres and it's fully wooded, untouched, not been perked, nothing, that is different than 2 acres of cleared land that has been perk tested, that has, all the systems in place. It's a different category. So those are things that you need to keep in mind when you are looking at a CMA and creating a CMA for your clients. Now the good stuff. So the MLS resources, most people do not, I'm not going to say most people, if you are newer, you might not be aware of all the resources that are available to us for free. Of course, I'm saying free like this because we pay for these services with our monthly and annual dues that we pay MLS. But any resource you needed to price a property, make a CMA, get comparables is available to you. You don't need to pay for extra services. And so the ones I've got listed, I'm going to show you all of these together. Of course, we have tax records. Tax records will give you a range of value. That is usually the most broad range of value and the most inaccurate range of value of the ones I'm going to show you today. But, you know, that is available. Tax records also would show you the estimated square footage of a house. Like if it's a listing and you haven't had it measured yet, you could go off of the tax record square footage just to do a general CMA for your sellers. But of course, you would want to mention, when I have this house professionally measured, the value might change. I'm going off the tax record square footage right now. So you just want to make sure they know that you will have it professionally measured, and that might alter things a little bit. The upcoming active, under contract, and closed comps on MLS are super important, especially the closed comps. So as an appraiser, they are going to look at closed comps. They're not going to look at things that are active. They're not going to look at things that are under contract. So if your house is for sale, the subject house, and both of your neighbor's house are under contract, and you know what they're under contract for, an appraiser has to use closed properties. So that is, of those categories, closed comps are going to be the most detail specific. And of course, we want them as close to where we are as possible. So the most recent, we don't want to look at a house that closed 18 months ago and use that as our number one comp. If possible, we want to use 3 months, 6 months max. Sometimes when we look at more unique properties, it's hard to get comps that are that recent, but the more recent, the better. And then of course, the more similar to our property, the better, which we'll talk about that in a minute. So my favorite 3 resources that MLS and Canopy offers are RPR, which stands for Realtor Property Resource, SAM reports, statistical analysis modules, and an app called Remind. And these 3 tools will make you look like an expert. And if you use these 3 tools, you can really narrow in your price and have a lot of data to support either a listing price or an offer price. Because again, everything we're talking about today, I do with a seller and I also do with a buyer. It just depends on, this is what we want to list a house for, or this is what we are going to offer on a house, and this is the data that supports that. So let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so if we go to Canopy, we are going to see down here under Realtor Tools, and everybody's dashboard I think looks a little different how you have it set up. Mine is on the right hand side towards the bottom, but it's the Realtor Tools right here. And hey, so Sarah, to begin,
Sarah, yes. I'm sorry. I don't know about anybody else, but my screen is not changing. I still see MLS resources.
Oh no. Okay. Let me fix that. Thank you for telling me.
You're welcome.
Okay, how about now?
Oh, yep. Now I see the matrix.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you, because there I go. I just people are either on the ship with me or they're not. So let me know if you're not on the ship and I will slow my little self down. So again, you log into Canopy and everybody's might look a little different, but mine is at the right-hand side towards the bottom and it says Realtor Tools. And so I'm going to go over the 3 new ones and then we'll kind of backtrack and look at tax records and just the closed comps and how to do that. But let's start with SAM, Statistical Analysis Module. And you'll see it's right here. It's the little bar graph. I really, really like this one. This is good. Sam is good for if you are listing a property, if you are a buyer putting an offer in on a property, or if you are an agent that has some downtime and you want to get to know the market that you are trying to work. Sam is your best friend. Sam is also your best friend if you are trying to market. If you want to send out a newsletter or you want to farm a neighborhood, this is such a wonderful resource. So when you look up here to this, the top left, you can search by different categories. You can search by a city, a neighborhood, a condo, a county, a zip code, or a subdivision. So if I was trying to farm a zip code, let's say I wanted to farm my zip code, I wanted to know the price per square foot in my zip code, the average days on market, I could search by zip code. I right now am going to show you how to search by subdivision because most of the time when we are listing a property or making an offer on a property, we want to be as specific as possible. So I picked a listing that, or a house that I sold last year that I'm using as all of my examples today. This house is in Kensington Village in Mooresville. So I have selected subdivision and I'm going to start typing in, if I can spell, Kensington Village, and you'll see it pops up. You can start typing and it'll pop up. So I'm going to select that. And then now I have a beautiful little chart that has lots of different categories. Up at the top, I can specify. So this is just going to be all Kensington Village, this chart right here. I can see, and this is the most recent. So right now, the average sales price, that's what it's highlighted on, is $390,000. You can see that in January of 2021, the average sales price in that neighborhood was $285,000. So you can see the increase that has happened, which we all know prices have drastically increased. If I want to see the price per square foot for Kensington Village, I will go down here and press that. The median or average price per square foot for that neighborhood right now is $164. If I want to see the number days on the market, so that means from list to going under contract, 2 is the average days on market. If I want to see the percentage of original price, so that means what it closed for that versus what it was listed for, I'm going to click on that. 102%. So if a house was listed for $400,000, now math is not for me, but then it's 102% of that is what the sales price is going to be. So this data is just fantastic. And then up at the top, you can narrow it down. So if I wanted to look, the house that I'm referencing for all my examples today was a 3-bedroom home. So if I wanted to list this house, I might just select 3-bedroom homes. I'm also going to select resale, not new construction, because this is not a new construction house. Traditional, not foreclosure. You can do all kinds of different things with, oops, I don't know what I did there. You can do all kinds of different things with this data, and you can narrow it down as specifically as you want it to be. So again, if I wanted to search, let's say I wanted to search a zip code instead of a subdivision. So I'm going to do that same zip code, 28115. Okay, so again, too, I can see the, oh, this is a good one too, month supply. We all know that if it's 6 months or less of a supply, it's more of a seller's market. So right now, the month supply in that neighborhood is 0.7. So not even 1 month supply. So that's good to show sellers. If you have sellers who are on the fence about selling, say, you know, there's not even a month supply of homes in this neighborhood. Now's a wonderful time to show. How I would use this data if I was a buyer going to make an offer on a house. Okay, so the average price per square foot of 3-bedroom, because remember, I focused it in 3-bedroom homes in this neighborhood, the average price per square foot is $189. So if I'm looking at a 3-bedroom home as a buyer's agent and a buyer trying to make an offer, and they have the house listed for $480, and I do the math, and see that that's an average price per square foot of 210. As a buyer's agent, I'm going to use this data and say, you know, the average price per square foot is 189. Why are you priced at 210? And I'm going to use that data as justification for my offer. Say we're offering 450 based on the average price per square foot for the neighborhood. That's more in line with the closed comps. And again, when you have information, you sound knowledgeable. You sound knowledgeable to your clients, and you also sound knowledgeable to the agent on the other end of the transaction, which is super important. So SAM, if you have never played around with SAM reports, I really encourage you to spend some time in here. If you were trying to farm a neighborhood, again, you could go back to subdivision. If I was trying to farm Kensington Village, then I could come up, again, it helps if you spell things right. If I was trying to farm this neighborhood, I could make a newsletter that I send out to the whole neighborhood. This is not a large neighborhood. There might be 100 houses in here. So I could create a little table in my newsletter that said the average price per square foot right now is 169. The average days on market is 2. The percentage of close or list to close price is 102%. These are numbers that if you were trying to farm a neighborhood and a seller saw those numbers, they would maybe perk up a little bit. And this is great because you could not say, you get to say, this is Kensington Village data. You don't have to say this is Mooresville data or Iredell County data. You get to really focus it in on whatever neighborhood you're trying to farm, or if you're trying to make an offer or come up with a sales price. So SAM data, love, love, love. 10 out of 10, love it. I encourage you to check that out. The next one that I want to show you is probably my favorite. And I say they're all my favorite. It's like your children. You can't have one real favorite, but the RPR is probably my real favorite. So again, I'm on Matrix, and down here, it's the Realtor Property Resource. So I'm going to click on that. If you have never used this before, the first time you click on it, it will ask you to create an account, but the same login that you use for Canopy or MLS is going to get you into this for the first time. So if you've never used it before, it will ask you to create an account, but then it's the same login information that you have already. So RPR is great because you can do a million things. I'm going to show you based on that property that I was speaking about. So this was a house I sold last year, 136 King William Drive. We're just going to pretend like the sellers call, or the buyers that I helped buy this house called me and said, I want you to list my house. Can you do a CMA for me and tell me what it's worth? So I'm going to go in and type in the address. So then it automatically is going to come up with an estimated value right here. Okay, 429.20 is the estimated value that it gives me. If I scroll down, it's going to give me some more information. 3 bed, 3 bath, 2,231 square foot, which all of those are accurate. That's the accurate data for this. It's going to give me a range, just like anything else. And it also gives me a confidence score. So if you're in a neighborhood like this one is, it's usually going to have a 4 or 5 star confidence level, which means there's lots of data, lots of comps to go off of. If it is a house that is more rural and not in a neighborhood and there are not a lot of comps, you're going to have a lower confidence level. That's the same with tax records. It basically just lets you know we have a lot of data or we don't have a ton of data, but this is still what we're thinking. So again, on this first sheet, when you type it in, you're going to see lots of stuff. You're going to see the school information. You're going to see the interior features, exterior features. Most of this stuff comes from MLS when the property's sold. The good thing about RPR is it also uses data from off-market properties. So if there was a house that sold for sale by owner or transferred from like an estate sale to someone, like a father to a son, and was never on MLS, that comp is still going to be included in RPR, which is something that some of the other comp things don't use all data. So off-market properties are also included with this RPR. So now, if I wanted to come up with a different number based on some updates that have been done. So let's say these people, I helped them buy the house, but let's say they added a fence and they updated the master bathroom and they wanted to see what kind of value that added to the property. Right here is a button that says refine value. So I'm going to say refine value. This is fabulous because it does not make you come up with the number on your own. It kind of calculates it itself. And again, this is a computer system. This is not a real life appraiser, but this is better than you just coming up with stuff off the top of your head. So I am going to say home improvement category. Let's say they remodeled the bath and they made it really upscale. So I'm going to say bath remodel upscale. Let's say they completed it in January of 2022. So it's less than a year old. And I'm going to ask my sellers, how much money did you put in that bath? So let's say they put in $15,000. Okay. So then I add in the value of what they added to the property. And you can see it increases the value by $7,890. This is important because, like I mentioned earlier, dollar in does not necessarily mean dollar out. And even though this was a new update, we can't necessarily add $15,000 to the value just because they put $15,000 into it. This is a great tool because it kind of takes into account what an appraiser uses when they think about age of upgrades and different characteristics like that. So again, it's got all these built-in categories. Let's say they added a deck. Okay. So again, let's say they added a deck in 2022 also, and it gives categories of mid-range upgrade, a high-end upgrade. So this was a mid-range deck addition upgrade. Let's say they spent $12,000 on that deck upgrade. So I'm going to add that value, and you can see now the value for the bath and the deck have increased the property $15,762. You can see the value that it's assigned for each of these. It also can take away value if there is something that needs to be done on the house. So if I go look at this listing and I see everything is beautiful except the floors and the whole house, they had like two Great Danes living in there, and the floors in the whole house are completely scratched up and messed up, and the floors need to be done in the whole house. Okay, so here I'm going to say the refined value by the needed improvements. So I'm going to say flooring update. And this doesn't give you a necessarily like cost, or it's not going to ask you the year it needs to be done and stuff, because these things have not been done yet. So if I know, just off the top of my head, it's probably going to cost $15,000 to get all these floors in this house replaced downstairs and upstairs, I can add in a refined value by what it needs. And you can see that number is going to be pretty much true for what it is. It just subtracts that value. Okay, and again, I'll show you this when I run this full report. This will make more sense. You can also refine value on the market, exterior, interior, lot size, view. So right now, when I run these reports, if I'm doing this for a seller or a buyer, I say local market conditions are in between average and hot. Local market conditions right now are not average. They are still, it is still a seller's market. Things are still selling quicker than the average like 6 month supply. So I'm moving this up a little bit. Home exterior condition, again, that is something you can kind of just do a range, a gauge of. Interior condition, if it's a house that, again, the floors look junky, the paint looks junky, you can tell they haven't just taken care of the house, then I'm gonna knock this down a little bit. As opposed to if it's a house that looks like a museum and beautiful, nothing needs to be done, I'm going to bump that up a little bit. You can play with those. Again, with lot size, if it is equal to other lot sizes in the neighborhood, that's what it's talking about. So if you have a neighborhood that has one house that has a huge corner lot surrounded by woods, but every other lot in the neighborhood backs up to another house, has no woods, is not a corner lot, then your subject property would have a greater superior to the other lots, but you're talking about in that neighborhood. And then view and privacy, same thing. So by me doing that, saying that the neighborhood or saying that the market is hotter than normal, I have increased the value by 17,161. So I've played around with some of the numbers, and then up here at the top, I'm going to say create report. Now, RPR takes a little bit to create a report. So it takes like 5 minutes, but you would select which report you want. A property report is 28 pages. Honestly, that's all you need. The seller's report is long. It's 81 pages long. So it gives like all the tax info, all the all the extra stuff. I have found that a property report is any information that I would ever need. So down here, I'm going to say run the report. And again, it takes about 5 minutes to run the report. You see this pop up and then you can X out of it. Up here at the top, it's got a little 1 beside report. That means that it's running that report for me. And when it gets done, it'll do a little ding dong, like a doorbell noise, to let you know that the report is ready. So we'll come back to that one in a second when the report is ready. The third tool that I want to show you, again, if you go back to your canopy, in the same realtor tool section, there's one called Remine, R-E-M-I-N-E, right here. It's a little blue icon. So Remine is very similar to the RPR, where it will create a comp report for you. Same thing, you can search by address, or you can search by zip code if you were just playing around with stuff. But you would go over here to search. I'm going to type in the same address that I've been using, 136 King William Drive. It pops up. What's good about this is it allows you to use as many or as little comps as you want to. So again, over here on the right, it's going to say create CMA. So I'm going to do that first. I'm just going to do the top one. Cloud CMA is an additional service you can pay for. You don't need to do that. The Remind CMA has everything you would ever need, and it's included. So now this section allows you to narrow in on the comps you want to use. So right now, again, my house I'm looking at is a 3-bedroom house. Right now, this is saying 2 to 5 bedrooms, 2 to 5 baths, no square footage minimums, whatever. And it's saying a 1/4 mile away from my property. So I'm going to change that to 1/2 mile away from my property, and you can just press search. When you do that, it's going to show you all of the comps, and it's going to show you which ones are active under contract, and which ones are closed. Okay. Now there's 31 total, but look, I have 26 that have closed on MLS. Well, 26 comps is too many. You do not need 26 comps. Ideally, I like to stick between 3 and 5, 3 and 6 comps, and just get those as close as possible. So 26 is too many. I like this because you can go back. So if I want to go back and refine, edit criteria. There it is. I was looking for it. So now I only want to look at 3-bedroom houses. Let's say 3 to 3. That's all I want to look at. Baths, I'll say 2 to 3 baths. Square footage, the house I'm looking at was 2,200 square foot. So I could say I'm going to look at 2,000 square foot minimum to 2,500 square foot maximum. Year built, the house I'm talking about was built in 2018. So I might say 2016 minimum to 2020 maximum. Number of floors, this is a 2-story house, so I can put 2-story there. So again, I'm going back and I am getting it as specific to the house I'm looking at as possible. You can keep going, keep going, keep going. Now I'm going to say apply. And you can see now I only have one comp. So maybe I did it too specific. So then I'm going to go back and edit my criteria. And maybe instead of changing the specifications, I might expand the circle a little bit. So instead of having it be half a mile, I might bump it up and say a mile away from my property. Keep the same 3-bedroom, 2-bath, all those things, but then I'm going to bump it up and do a mile away. So now I say search. Well, that's a bus too. There's only one, but you get the point. You can adjust things. Let's say I go 3 to 4 bedrooms instead of just 3. So you can adjust things and then apply. Now I have 2 comps. So you can play with things until you have the number of comps that are going to serve you well for what you're trying to do. Once you have those comps that you're looking for, you can say save and continue. And the good thing about this is you can upload your logo. You can upload Lantern's logo. You can upload a picture of yourself if you want to. I don't have any of that stuff uploaded. I think I have Lantern on there, but I don't have a picture or anything. But you can upload your logo and your picture and your email and your cell phone. And so when you print out this document, and you could even add the client. So let's say I'm adding my name for the client, but you can add all these things. Save and continue. And then when that report comes up, and again, this one takes a minute to come up also, but once the report comes up, you look like you know what you're talking about. Like you've got a thing that says, this is a report prepared for Melissa Jackling by Sarah Romesburg. Here's the data, print it off, look at it. Like you look like an expert in your field when you have something like this to give. Again, on the seller side to finalize a price, or on the buyer side to say, this is really what this home is worth. So again, these are tools that you really should be using if you are selling a house or helping a buyer write an offer for a home. Let me go back to RPR so I can show you what that report looks like. My report has been generated. It came up, so you can download your report. Same thing. You look very official when you have this. Presented by Sarah Romesburg. It's got my email on there. It's got my website. It's got my office address. If I had my picture, it could have my picture on there too. So again, this says the current estimated value before I refined value was $429. Then remember, I went in, I played with the value and added value for the bathroom and for the deck, but then I took away value for the flooring. So now it shows me my refined value is $446. You keep scrolling down, it gives the property information. It's going to give some neighborhood information. It's going to give comps that were used to come up with this. It's going to give the last pictures that were in MLS if it had been listed before. It's going to show where I refined the value and give that information. Market conditions. It just gives so much information. And if you have a seller or a buyer who is like me and very data driven, this is going to make them so happy to see this piece of paper in front of them. It's going to show you the property history. So again, this house in if it wasn't even built yet, but if it was around in January 2009, it would have been worth like $170,000, but here we are now. So it shows the growth of the neighborhood and of the home. It gives the deed information, the property, where this property is compared to other properties in that zip code, other properties in that neighborhood. Like the data in here is just fabulous. And this is so easy to do. All you have to do is type in the address, run the search, make modifications if you want to or need to, but then you have this beautiful report to share with. If it's in a flood zone, it tells you, like, it just tells you all the things. And again, I just did the property report. I did not even do the seller report. So the property report, in my opinion, gives you all the information that you would need. So let's say, again, I'm trying to list this price. I have looked at the SAM data to see the average price per square foot of houses like this in this neighborhood. I've looked at the Remind map to find the best comps and narrowed it down using the valuation on Remind. I've pulled the RPR report, and now I've got 3 different data points that I can look at and really truly narrow down a price that I think is market value and is going to get the seller the most money possible for their home. You don't want to look at one resource. You want to look at as many resources as are available. I know a lot of people let's go back to Canopy. A lot of people will just look at comps from MLS. Okay, well, basically those programs I showed you are doing that, but it does it for you. So if I am going to type in this address on MLS, 136 King William Drive. Okay. Oh, my fingers are not working very well today. King William. Okay. There we go. Do we have it? No. Well, you know what I mean. I'm going to type this in and pull this up. Close properties. I'm going to get rid of 180 days because, again, this house sold last year. So this is not going to be within the last 6 months. King William. All right, there we go. So if I pull it up like here, this is the last time it sold for $285,000. I can see the MLS sheet from when it sold. If you're looking at a listing that has already sold like this one, all of the tools I just showed you, you can do from the specific MLS listing. So you can see right here, the little bar graph is SAM. If I were to press that SAM from here, it will take me directly to statistics for this house in that neighborhood. The Remind is this little blue like paper clip looking thing. So again, I could click Remind from this MLS listing. It will take me directly to the address. RPR is the different colored dots. I could press that. It will take me directly to RPR. So you can either go from the home screen of Matrix, or if you have a property in place, like it's already listed, you can go to the property in MLS, and all these little icons are available for you to take you directly there, which is saves a step. But also you can see, you know, if I want to do a quick little CMA in MLS, I can come down here and say quick CMA. It's going to pull houses from that neighborhood, but you can see it does not do a very good job. Right now, there's only one listing in that neighborhood that it's showing, which is the subject property. So this is very generic. This is very basic. It does not do a good job of taking in different comps. And then of course you could look at tax records and use that data, but really that Remind, RPR, and SAM reports are the 3 things I really want you to focus on when it comes to narrowing down a property. Okay, so that was a lot of talking. Does anyone, before I go back to the PowerPoint, does anyone have any questions about any of those 3 resources or any questions in general?
I have a question, Sarah. Even though something closed recently, or we go back as far as 3 months ago, even compared to today, it's very different. And comps, I have a potential listing coming up, and I'm a little concerned about how to balance that information, because some of the measured comps will be when things were so accelerated and high. How would you balance that?
Yeah, that's a very legitimate concern, and I'm dealing with that currently too with a house that I'm about to list, because sellers, you know, they see that, like you said, a house sold 3 months ago, 6 months ago for this price, and now things have changed a little bit. So how I would accommodate for that is when I'm on the RPR and it's looking at the comps, I would adjust the value a little bit negatively if all the comps are super inflated, just to kind of accommodate for that. And I would also tell my sellers, the reason I'm doing this is because you can see this month, the average days on market was, or if we're thinking 3 months ago, the average days on market was 2 days and it sold for 102% of the list price. 2 months ago, the average days on market was 6 days and it sold for 100% of the sales price. 1 month ago, the average days on market is 15. So you really want to try to show them a pattern of why there's a little bit of change in the comps. And SAM reports are good because you can narrow it down month by month. So you could go back and search data for July 2022, June 2022, May 2022, and kind of show them the pattern of how things have shifted a little bit. And hopefully they understand that. But you're right, this is kind of a weird time when it comes to nailing down a price, because what was true 3 months ago, and especially what was true 6 months ago, it's still true. It is still a seller's market that we have, but with the change in interest rates and, the uncertainty of things, it has slowed down a little bit. So I would just try to do like a month by month comparison in SAM reports to show them how things have changed month by month. And hopefully there's going to be enough data that supports that. Hopefully the house you're talking about has enough comps around it to show the pattern you're trying to create. But right now I'm personally just telling my sellers, it's still a great time to sell. The value is still greater than anything that has been for you, but the timing is not as quick, which honestly, I've been telling people is not the worst thing in the world, because the offers coming in now are, serious buyers and people who are not just making offers because they're afraid they're never going to get a house again and then they back out later. So it definitely is a shift of what we have known to be the case the past 2 years. But usually I found if you can just support with any kind of data and talk them through the reason for why things are different than they might have been for their neighbors 6 months ago, people tend to be pretty agreeable with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, so let me keep on going with my PowerPoint. And again, I'll wrap it up. I have like 5 minutes to keep my under an hour mark. So maybe we'll have some questions again at the end. Other resources that are available to you, obviously bolded, underlined, attend classes, which here you are attending a class. Canopy offers so many great classes. The Real Estate Commission has a full library of topics where they've pre-recorded like instructors and some of the Real Estate Commission members giving speeches and talks on things. So if you have downtime, if you have told yourself every day between 9 and 11, I'm going to try to learn something and become more of an expert about something, I definitely would suggest looking at Canopy classes. Obviously the Lantern classes, we have a YouTube channel with all of the back classes on there. The Real Estate Commission website has tons of classes, but really you just have to dive deep and kind of learn as much as you can. You can also obtain certifications. So if you want to really focus in and work on, foreclosures and bank-owned properties, which now there's not as big of a deal as it was a few years ago, but you can get certifications for that. You can get a certification to work with first-time home buyers. You can get certifications to work with veterans or members of our community, like first responders. There's all kinds of certifications that you can get. Usually those are through the Realtor National Association of Realtors or your Realtor Association. So those are things that you could do in your downtime to become more knowledgeable about what you're trying to do. The NAR website is a good place. Like I said, they have a lot of stock videos on there. A great thing to do, I think, if you are brand new, is to see about getting a mentor. I know Lantern has a mentor program where some seasoned agents have said they would be a mentor to a new agent, and just having somebody to bounce off ideas or ask questions or ask if you could tag along to a listing appointment. A mentor is a great tool. Obviously your BICs, like I'm the BIC at the Mooresville office, your BICs are there to help you with general things and stuff like that. But if you want someone to truly kind of shadow and go along with and really dive deeply into things, a mentor is a great idea. And then the last one sounds kind of silly, but it's 2022 and YouTube is a great resource for realtors. I mean, honestly, YouTube's a great resource for anything. If you need to learn how to do anything in life, you can just find a YouTube video to teach you how to do anything in life. But there are so many good real estate videos on YouTube, even when it comes down to CMAs and pricing, or how to farm a neighborhood, or how to market to a certain niche of people. Like, YouTube is such a great tool. And again, that's free. Those are just all ways that you could learn more in your downtime, because in real estate, you are either busting butt and you have no downtime, or you're dead. Or that's my experience. Maybe that's not everybody's experience, but it's like the roller coaster. And so in those moments of being down, when you have time to devote to other things, like, just try to learn as much as you can. And just be like a lifelong learner. And that just makes you more knowledgeable. It makes you more respected by the clients. And it just makes you look like you're the professional, which you are the professional. And then lastly, these are my final tips. I cannot stress this enough. Never, ever, 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 ever talk numbers or price with a client before you have done your research. Clients do not forget things. They do not forget. They're like children. You can tell your children you'll take them to the park next week, and then they don't forget that. Every day they want to talk about the park. So clients are just like that. You can't say casually to someone at a party, if someone says, well, what do you think I could sell my house for? And you just say 450. I think you could get 450 out of it. Well, then they call you the next week and say, can you come over and look at my house and let's talk about it? Then you do some research and you see that their house at most is worth 420. Well, guess what number they remember? They remember 450. So that is so important, not to speak numbers. Don't say anything unless you have done your research. And it's okay for us to say, let me look into that for you. Let me pull some comps. Let me pull some data. I'd love to meet you next week for coffee and we could talk about it. But part of being an expert, and like at the bottom, I said, you're the expert. If not one, become one. Part of being an expert when it comes to pricing and CMAs and just representing our clients the best we can is to not speak out of turn, not speak more than you know for a fact. It makes you a strong realtor to say, let me do research on
She's
this
ending tomorrow. She's ending it. It's recorded, so I can watch
Just
it.
close it. You listen to it.
and we'll get back on that. So just please don't do that. Because again, everyone will be bitten by that at some point in their career where they say something and then the client's like, wait a minute, I thought you said this. They do not forget anything. Just don't do it. Learn from my mistakes. I've made those mistakes before. And then lastly, you have to remember that data is dynamic. So like Connie asked a few minutes ago, houses that had this price per square foot and this days on market 3 months ago, 6 months ago is not the case right now. It won't be the case 3 months from now, 6 months from now. Data is ever changing. And so we have to constantly be up on the market. I can't pull this data for this house in Mooresville today. And then if 3 months from now, they really want me to sell it, but I pulled all of my data today, I have to do it again. You can't use data that you pulled or market knowledge that you pulled a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 weeks ago, and use it as facts. You always have to be up to date on the market. You always have to be looking at that information, looking at the data that's available. And so again, just don't be afraid to say, let me look into this again. Let me pull more recent comps and then call them back and have the actual numbers and data that you need instead of having to backtrack, because that just does not make you look very professional. So hopefully I did not talk too fast, and hopefully those MLS tools. You'll have time just to get in there and play with them and do your house. Like if you don't have an active listing right now, do your house and pretend like you're your own seller and you would prepare a CMA for your house, or do it for one of your neighbors, or do it for someone that mentioned last year they might want to sell. Do a full report for them and just stick it in the mail and say, I remember last year you talking about how much house or how much value your house was worth. You know, here's a report that I made for you, and that might spark them enough to list their house actually, or, you know, do something about it. So get around with all those tools and definitely play around and just see what is available. Is my advice. So does anybody have any questions? I'm gonna stop sharing the screen so we can be all back together, but does anybody have any questions? Oh, there was one question in chat from Australia. Which of the systems do you prefer? So RPR is my favorite, but I use all three. I use all three of those to kind of narrow it down. But if I'm going to give a client a packet, it's going to be the RPR one. I just think that one looks the most professional. I think that one is not like overload information, not too little information. I think that one is like the perfect amount of information. So the RPR comp report, the property report, is what I give to buyers and sellers for them to have.
Thank you, Sarah. One question. Can you give me an idea about the square footage for a basement compared to a second floor? I mean, what's the difference?
Well, I'm not super knowledgeable on that. It really depends on if it's heated square footage or not. If it's heated square footage in the basement that's continuous to from the house versus heated square footage in the second floor, that number is going to be very similar. A lot of times with basements, you run into, you know, some of the basement being finished, some of the basement not being finished, or you run into a situation where the stairs to get from the house to the basement are not finished. And then you get to the basement and it's finished. But to be heated living space, it has to be continuous. So if it's all just continuous living space, like the house I live in has a basement, a fully finished basement. There's no unfinished part of it. And it's all heated square footage. You don't go out of heated square footage to get to the basement. So for my house, the value of the square footage would be basically the same. The footprint obviously looks a little bit different because basement homes kind of usually are ranches with bigger footprints, but it all just depends on if it's heated, not heated, if it goes from heated to not heated, as far as what counts and the price that it counts at.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions? And again, if you think of something after the fact, let me go back to my PowerPoint real quick, and I will go to that first page so you can see my contact information. So there is my email address and my cell phone number. If you had any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. But you guys are, it's like I said, preaching to the choir because you're in a class and you are wanting to learn, and that's half the battle, is wanting to be versed on all these things and all the changes and just become an expert. Like if I could give you any advice, just play around with numbers. Know the average price per square foot right now for your zip code or your target area. Know the number of days of market for your zip code. Like those are easy numbers to check in on every month. And so if I know the average price per day or days on the market for both of the Mooresville zip codes and the Troutman zip code, that's information that is not hard to know. And it makes me look like an expert to people who ask me when someone says, what's the real estate market like? Which we get asked that all the time. If I could say, you know, well, the average days on market for houses in Troutman right now is 3 days on market, and houses are selling at 103% of the list price. That's a better answer than me saying it's crazy. The market's crazy right now. Like, you just want to be knowledgeable and you want to be an expert. And those are easy things to do. Even if you're experienced or not experienced, it makes you look like an expert in what you do. Okay, all right. Well, if no one has any other questions, I just want to thank y'all so much for coming today to the class. And if you have anything after the fact, let me know. There's lots of great classes coming up this month with Lantern. So I do encourage you to kind of look at the education calendar and tune in to as many as possible. The more you know, the more knowledgeable you are and the more better you can serve your clients. So again, thank y'all for coming, and I will see you soon.
Sarah, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Try to keep it at an hour.